The Battle of Yorktown, fought in the fall of 1781, stands as one of the most significant engagements of the American Revolutionary War. This battle, located in Yorktown, Virginia, marked the decisive victory of the combined American and French forces over the British, effectively signaling the end of the conflict and paving the way for American independence. Understanding the Battle of Yorktown requires examining the broader context of the Revolutionary War, the key participants, the strategy and tactics used by both sides, and the unique challenges they faced. By the late 1770s, the American Revolutionary War had dragged on for several years. While the British had won several key battles early in the war, their ability to crush the rebellion and restore control over the American colonies was being gradually undermined. The British had hoped to leverage their superior numbers, well-trained troops, and control of the seas to maintain dominance. However, they faced increasing resistance, not just from American forces but also from growing international support for the American cause, particularly from France. France had formally allied with the Americans in 1778, providing crucial military aid, supplies, and naval support. By 1781, British military leaders found themselves overstretched. General Charles Cornwallis, the commander of British forces in the southern colonies, had been engaged in a long, grueling campaign across the Carolinas. After a series of battles and a strategic retreat, Cornwallis moved his army to the coastal town of Yorktown, Virginia, seeking a secure position from which he could receive supplies and reinforcements from the British Navy. However, this decision would prove disastrous. Cornwallis believed that the British Navy's control of the seas would allow him to hold out at Yorktown until he could be reinforced or evacuated. However, the arrival of the French fleet would dramatically alter the balance of power. On the British side, General Cornwallis commanded approximately 9,000 troops. His army was composed of regular British soldiers, Loyalist militia, American colonists who remained loyal to the British Crown, and hired Hessian mercenaries from Germany. Though highly disciplined and experienced, Cornwallis' forces were tired from months of campaigning and stretched thin across the Atlantic coast. Opposing the British were the combined American and French forces, numbering around 17,000 men. General George Washington, the commander-in-chief of the Continental Army, led the American forces, which were composed of Continental regulars, state militias, and a growing number of professional soldiers. By this point in the war, the Continental Army had become a more seasoned and disciplined force, though it still struggled with supply shortages, desertions, and other challenges. Crucially, Washington was supported by French forces under the command of General Jean-Baptiste Donatien de Vimour, Comte de Rochambeau. The French contribution to the American war effort cannot be overstated. In addition to troops, France provided naval support in the form of the fleet commanded by Admiral François-Joseph Paul, Comte de Grasse. De Grasse's naval presence would prove decisive in cutting off British escape routes and securing victory at Yorktown. The Battle of Yorktown unfolded over several weeks, primarily as a siege. On September 28, 1781, Washington and Rochambeau arrived at Yorktown with their combined forces and began encircling Cornwallis's army. They established siege lines, cutting off British supply routes and slowly tightening their grip on the town. The French fleet under de Grasse played a key role by blocking the Chesapeake Bay, preventing the British Navy from delivering supplies or reinforcements to Cornwallis. The British forces found themselves trapped between the French fleet and the American and French troops on land. Throughout the siege, the British faced mounting difficulties. They were isolated and unable to receive supplies, and their attempts to break out of Yorktown were repeatedly thwarted by the well-coordinated American and French forces. The British artillery, though formidable, could not match the sheer numbers of American and French cannons, which relentlessly bombarded British positions. On October 9th, the Allies began a more intense bombardment, pounding the British defenses day and night. Washington and Rochambeau, employing siege warfare tactics learned from European conflicts, methodically advanced their siege lines closer and closer to the British fortifications. The relentless artillery barrage, coupled with the ever-tightening siege, steadily weakened British morale and military capability. A critical moment in the battle came when American and French forces launched an assault on two key British defensive positions, known as redoubts 9 and 10. These earthwork fortifications were vital to the British defense. Under the command of Alexander Hamilton, American forces captured Redoubt 10 in a fierce nighttime attack, while French forces took Redoubt 9. With these positions in American and French hands, Cornwallis's situation became untenable. On October 17, 1781, with his army trapped and his supplies dwindling, General Cornwallis requested a ceasefire to discuss terms of surrender. 2 days later, on October 19, Cornwallis formally surrendered his army to Washington. The British forces, numbering around 8,000, laid down their arms in a ceremony that has since become iconic in American history. Interestingly, Cornwallis did not attend the surrender ceremony himself, citing illness, and instead sent his second-in-command, General Charles O'Hara, to deliver his sword to the victorious Allied commanders. O'Hara attempted to surrender to Rochambeau, but the French general directed him to Washington, who in turn directed him to one of his subordinates. This act, though symbolic, underscored the joint nature of the Allied victory. The surrender at Yorktown was not the final engagement of the American Revolution, but it was undoubtedly the most decisive. In its aftermath, British political will to continue the war crumbled. The defeat at Yorktown, coupled with mounting war debts and growing opposition to the war at home, led the British government to seek peace with the Americans. Negotiations began in 1782, and the Treaty of Paris was signed in 1783, formally recognizing American independence. The Battle of Yorktown is historically significant for several reasons. First and foremost, it was the final major battle of the war, effectively ending British hopes of quelling the American rebellion. The victory at Yorktown showcased the growing professionalism and military capability of the Continental Army, as well as the importance of international alliances in securing American independence. French involvement was particularly crucial. Without the French fleet's control of the Chesapeake Bay, Cornwallis might have been able to escape or be reinforced. Likewise, the presence of French troops on the ground provided the manpower and expertise necessary to execute a successful siege. The battle demonstrated the power of cooperation between nations with shared interests. Yorktown also served as a vindication of George Washington's leadership. Throughout the war, Washington had faced numerous challenges, including lack of resources, poor morale, and internal dissension. However, his ability to coordinate with Rochambeau and de Grasse, his strategic insight in recognizing the opportunity to trap Cornwallis at Yorktown, and his patience in executing the siege all contributed to his legacy as a master tactician and leader. Yorktown itself, a small port town on the York River in Virginia, was strategically chosen by Cornwallis because of its defensibility and proximity to the Chesapeake Bay. Its position, however, also made it vulnerable to a blockade, as it allowed the French fleet to cut off sea access. The landscape around Yorktown, with its rolling hills, forests, and rivers, played a crucial role in the siege, as Washington's forces methodically dug trenches and erected artillery emplacements that gradually enclosed the British. The timing of the siege was also significant. By the autumn of 1781, British hopes of a swift victory in the American colonies had faded, and the war had entered a phase of attrition. The success at Yorktown was the culmination of years of effort and endurance by both American revolutionaries and their French allies. The Battle of Yorktown, fought between September and October 1781, was a turning point in the American Revolution. The successful siege by American and French forces under George Washington and the French fleet's control of the Chesapeake Bay led to the surrender of British General Cornwallis and his army. This defeat shattered British resolve and brought about the end of the war, resulting in American independence. The battle underscored the importance of international alliances, particularly with France, and solidified Washington's reputation as a capable and strategic military leader. Yorktown is remembered as a defining moment in the creation of the United States and the birth of a new nation.